Hi everyone, and welcome to my chaotic corner of the internet. Before I get into this video, I want to put out 3 whole disclaimers. Number 1, I'm not a medical professional. If you have any questions about this topic, I would recommend talking to your doctor about it. It's okay if you leave me comments, please leave me comments, but just know that if you have any questions, I'm probably not the one to answer them. Number 2, I'm in no way trying to scare anyone away from getting an IUD. I despise fear-mongering. For every person who has a story like mine, you'll meet like 10 people who love their IUDs and never want them taken out. It's just a matter of everyone is different, everyone's body is different, everyone's chemistry is different. Your mileage may vary. Thirdly, I know this is typically a women's health issue, but I'm non-binary. I use they or he pronouns. I'm not a woman, I'm not a girl. Please keep that in mind. Non-binary people have IUDs too, alright? We're out there. Well, not me anymore, but you get what I'm saying. So anyway, welcome to what is potentially the most personal and the most TMI video that I will probably ever make on this channel. So I've been on hormonal birth control for most of my life because it helps me with a lot of things. It controls my acne and other stuff. Plus, I never want to have kids, so it makes sense. However, the Supreme Court of the US is kind of ridiculous nowadays, and they seem to be cutting back on human rights like crazy, so I kind of wanted to make a more permanent thing happen in terms of birth control, and that's the reason why I decided to go for an IUD. And going into it, I thought I was making an informed decision. I thought I knew what I was getting into. You know, my doctor told me a lot of stuff about it, and I had read a lot of good things about it. I ended up going with the Mirena hormonal IUD because it just seemed like the right option. I went to have it put in August of 2022, so last year. Not even a year ago, actually. 9 months ago, I guess. And for the first month or so, things were relatively fine. I had kind of the normal side effects of spotting and severe cramping to the point where I felt like I was being stabbed. Other than that, it really legitimately wasn't that bad, and I really thought that I was going to be among the people who have IUDs and love them. But unfortunately, the really bad anxiety started the month after that. So in September 2022, there was this one day when I had worked really hard and I hadn't had a lot to eat and I hadn't had a lot of water to drink. I had mostly just had a lot of caffeine because I had a lot to do that day, including I got my book back from the editor. If you haven't read Thirst Trap, where is it? It's up there. There it is. If you haven't read Thirst Trap, I'm just saying, my books are always linked in the description. Anyway, I had just gotten Thirst Trap back from the editor and I was working my ass off on that. I was up until 2 a.m. And then I forced myself to go to sleep. And then I woke up at 4 a.m. thinking I was having an actual heart attack. My heart was racing, my left arm was numb, I just generally felt really a sense of dread, a sense of doom, right? And so I called the advice nurse through my insurance, and thank goodness for them. They basically were like, well, we don't think you're having a heart attack, but you might want to go to urgent care. But I didn't want to go to urgent care because I had gone to urgent care recently for an unrelated thing, and I was there for 9 hours, and I was like, I really don't want to be there for 9 hours again. So they ended up having a doctor call me the next morning, and the doctor was like, oh yeah, no, that happened to me when I was in med school. Just try to drink more water next time, don't work yourself so hard, and eat more food. And I was like, wow, I have doctor in med school problems? I felt so cool and so validated by that. I thought, okay, maybe I'll just cut back on caffeine, maybe I just overwork myself. And maybe I'm more sensitive to caffeine now than I was before. Well then, in October of 2022, I was driving to my friend's Halloween party, and I had been cutting back on caffeine. I had been taking care of myself, and it happened again. My left arm went numb. I had this sense of impending doom. I felt like the world was crashing down on me. It came out of nowhere. I was just driving at nighttime, which yeah, that's something that gives you anxiety, but not like that. I mean, it was really intense. And so I ended up pulling over into a Popeyes parking lot, and my mom came and picked me up, and it was the whole thing. And then basically I just kept having anxiety episodes, either anxiety attacks or panic attacks and stuff like that for months. And it's not like it was predictable. It's not like it was at a certain time per month. It's not like there was any one particular trigger. They just kept happening. I really felt kind of like out of control. And especially in February of this year, so last month, I had this episode of like intense astraphobia. There's this one night when I had, it was a regular day. I'd gone to work, I hung out with a friend, we had dinner, and after that I went to the grocery store. And as I was at the grocery store, I happened to check the weather forecast for the next day, and the weather forecast said that there was going to be a thunderstorm. No big deal. I live in Georgia. But I catastrophized the hell out of that. I was like, there is not just going to be a thunderstorm. There is going to be a like EF5 tornado that's going to blast through my city and wreck my shit. And I got so scared of this hypothetical situation. My arm went numb again, my hands were shaking, and I just felt this like immediate like flight response. Like I was so terrified that it felt like prophetic. It felt like a life or death situation. And so what I ended up doing was like packing up some belongings and going to my parents' house and spending the night in their basement, because the basement was like the only place I felt safe. And the next day, there wasn't even a storm. Like nothing happened. And like, thank God, because my cats were still at home. I wasn't thinking clearly, obviously. It was so terrifying in the moment. And then for like weeks after that, it just kind of lingered, like this weird anxiety. Like, I've never been a big fan of thunderstorms, especially severe ones and like the ones that stay over your house for like 5 hours. But I was afraid of like everything. I would check the weather obsessively. I would watch for like natural disasters that were happening in other parts of the world and become convinced that like it was going to happen here. I forgot to mention that I also was doing a lot of research about like places that never have natural disasters, and it turns out that Monaco is the only actually safe place in the world. And apparently Rhode Island never gets tornadoes. Like they've never had a tornado, or it's like the rarest there. So yeah, I did a lot of research about this shit, trying to figure out like where I can live, where I can avoid weather at all costs, which was like kind of intense and like a major sign of astraphobia. The earthquake in Turkey happened around this time, and then a cyclone hit New Zealand around this time, and I was like, it's just a matter of time before something happens to me. I would be afraid of clouds. Like when it would be cloudy outside, which happens all the time here, I would be like super afraid that it was going to be more than clouds. Like, I had to take down my wind chime because the sound of the wind chime started to seem ominous to me. Every time I got like a notification on my phone, it was like just someone texted me, but I'd be like, oh my god, it's a severe weather alert. Like it wasn't, like it was fine. But I just kept like catastrophizing everything. I was afraid of the rain. I was afraid of the wind. I was afraid of clouds. Like, very much unlike myself. The longest time, and this is like the weirdest thing, I couldn't look at a building and just see it as a building. I would look at a building and my brain would immediately force me to imagine like a tornado running into it, or like a tree hitting it, or like just a really big gust of wind hitting it. And I would always imagine where I would hide in that building. Like imagine every single building. And I commute, so I see a lot of buildings. Every single building I look at, I would immediately imagine it getting its shit wrecked. And then I would immediately picture where I would be hiding in that building. It was like weirdly stressful, and it was like a constant thing. And there was this one time when I was like out drinking with one of my friends, and like we were on like the back patio, and there were these apartments right there. I was like, it'd be nice to live there because like it's so nice, it's so close to this bar. And I realized like I wasn't imagining that building getting destroyed. And I was like amazed, because it had been so long since that had happened. And this went on for weeks, and I started to realize like, yes, I have anxiety. I've had anxiety my whole life. I'm diagnosed and everything. But like, this was a whole different level. This was like a full-on panic disorder that was like coming on out of nowhere. I've had like panic moments before. Like I had a lot of panic attacks my freshman year of college. I had a lot of panic attacks and anxiety attacks in like 2017 for some reason. But this was like, I mean, I'm like, where did this come from? Like there was no discernible trigger for it. And it was like, it seemed like the frequency just shot up like that. I started to think like, what is the before and after? What changed? And the only thing I could think of was I had an IUD put in. And so I googled Mirena anxiety, and sure enough, not everyone. I think it's a relatively small chunk of the population, but there are some people for whom the Mirena just causes our anxiety to get super duper high. I read an article about it, and I saw a YouTube video about it, and like, these people were mostly talking about like fear of death or like agoraphobia, and for me, I guess it manifested in like astraphobia, but regardless, like, some people, for whatever reason, do have like an increase of anxiety with Mirena, and for me, there was like a very clear before and after. There was very much like, okay, before this, yes, I had anxiety, but it wasn't this bad. Now, it's like real bad. I started to think that maybe I would have to have it taken out. And I made a Facebook status about it. Like, I was like, hey, does anyone who has like an IUD, like, have you noticed any increased anxiety? Most people were like, no, I love it. Mine's great. But then one of my friends, like, that status made her realize that her depression had gotten worse since she had a different kind of IUD put in. And she just thought she was in like a year-long, like, major depressive episode. And it was my Facebook status that made her realize that, again, there was like a clear before and after. And so that's the reason I'm making this video. This video is not for people who are thinking about getting an IUD and you're gonna psych yourself out for it. This video is for people who already have an IUD and are wondering if there's a chance that it's linked to an increase in anxiety. Once again, I'm not a healthcare professional. I'm just talking about my own experience. But you may want to talk to your doctor about this, because it's definitely something that happens, and I don't think that a lot of people know that that's something that can happen. We tend to think of, like, you know, the reproductive system and hormones and mental health as being different things, but like, it's all chemicals. It all works together to either make your life fine or to mess things up for you. I got it taken out on St. Patrick's Day of this year. I do want to say, having the Mirena put in was not as bad as I thought it was going to be. I psyched myself out the night before, and I really thought it was going to be like brutally painful. It really wasn't, for me at least. But again, everyone's different. Getting it taken out, not bad at all. Barely felt anything. I did have a period of heavy bleeding afterwards, so that was less than pleasant. But, you know, I ate a hamburger and went on my day. It has also only been a week, so I can't really say if like there's been any change in my anxiety. My anxiety did kind of start to subside even before I got it taken out, but I'm hoping that it will continue in that vein, and that like eventually, maybe a few months out, once the progesterone or whatever has worked its way through my system, because like I did get back on the pills that I was on before, so I didn't completely disrupt my hormones, but like at the same time my body is definitely like, what are you doing? But I'm hoping that like once the Mirena hormones are out of my system, like maybe I'll feel even better. But like, let me just tell you, there was a thunderstorm this morning, and although there was like a brief period of time where I was like a little bit nervous, I definitely feel like I dealt with it much better than I would have like a month ago. And, you know, in the sense that I stayed at home. I didn't go like stay in my parents' basement, and I just kind of like cuddle with my cats. Also, having blackout curtains helps a lot if you're really affected by like the flash of lightning, because I know sometimes I'm just like, oh, it's so bright. Like, blackout curtains, I can't see anything anymore. It's great. But no, like I even went outside on my porch and like drank a Coke Zero and like watched the rain pour down, and I was like, this is normal. This is a very normal weather event. There was a period where I started to psych myself out, so I like went inside and I kind of like journaled and, you know, worked my way through it. But like, I do feel like I'm seeing a light at the end of the tunnel, and I really think that things will only continue to improve the more that I have not had the Mirena in. So yeah, I didn't want to make this video to scare anyone. I just want to make this video to talk about my experience, because I feel like it's still kind of taboo to talk about reproductive health, first of all, to talk about having an IUD, secondly. Like, you know, people are like, oh, that's so personal. I mean, yeah, it is. It's like inside your body, but like at the same time, hello. At the same time, it is like part of healthcare, and it is like part of medicine. And it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's nothing to be like hush hush about. It's just, it's normal. And I think we should talk about it more. And, you know, I think that if you have had like an experience like this, it's really nice to find other people who have had similar experiences, because you feel less alone. I saw myself in that article, and I like watched a YouTube video, and I saw myself in that video. I was like, oh my God, this is a thing. Like, I felt less crazy. Like, I was still anxious, but I felt less crazy about it. So that's the reason I'm making this video, is to, in case somebody out there sees it and it's like, oh, my anxiety has gotten worse since I got put in. You know, like, I want people to feel like they're not alone, because this is apparently something that can and does happen. I will also say that when I was consulting with the doctor about getting it taken out, she said that for some people, you'll have like an initial increase in anxiety and then it gets better over time. But I wasn't trying to wait that long. Like, it had already been like 9 months. I figured at that point I'd given it the old college try, and I just didn't want it to get worse because I figured there was like a possibility that it could get worse. No, just go ahead and take this thing out of me. So yeah, overall, I don't regret having it put in the first place, and I also don't regret having it taken out. It was definitely a time. It was an experience. Let me know in the comments if you've had anything similar happen to you. Again, if you're watching this because you're thinking about getting an IUD put in, don't be scared. Give it a shot, see how it goes, because like, I'm just one person. But yeah, I hope you'll have a wonderful day. I will see you lovely humans next time.